Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we talk about movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong.
Or right.
I'm Reese. Across from me we have
David.
To his left,
Irina.
To my right, Sky and Dante yet again. They have real strong feelings about Terminator Dark Fate, so they will be subbing in for Noah this week. And arriving at work in the morning only to discover a machine has taken his job, we have...
AJ, not again.
They took a job.
That's maybe the most ridiculous scene in the movie where her brother comes into work and there's just this big machine arm, like
No one told him.
Assembling things, like
They really snuck that
Like,
in there.
oh, this is awkward.
it's like, oh, the machine.
Those just, come out of the Amazon delivery box and set up in 30 seconds. That's how that works.
Yeah.
I just like to imagine him staring at it and then like the machine turning to him. I know it doesn't have a face, but like a crane arm like turning to him, and then it's just like this pause.
Awkward silence in subtitles.
Awkward.
Freaking Genesis.
Hey, it's not Genesis anymore. It's oh man, they had a new generic name for
Dreamcast?
it. So it's Skynet, Genesis,
Oh,
and then this
Legion.
one- Legion. Yes, I think Legion's a little better than
Legion's
Genesis.
way cooler.
Yeah, but it's still generic in that vaguely generic, which I guess makes sense with corporations today. You got like Facebook.
Well, you know why
Meta.
I chose Legion, though, right?
I mean,
and-
we are Legion.
Yeah,
like I
'Cause
know.
they're just
Yeah.
roaming around.
Well,
Yeah.
and if you take the name of the new Terminator in this movie, was it Rev 8?
Rev 9.
Rev 9, sorry. I bypassed the 8th model. But yeah, that's talking about revelations in the Bible, and a lot of that has to do with it. So
I actually didn't know that.
a lot
So-
of biblical references.
Yeah, we'll have to dig into that. The movie, I mentioned it already, that we're talking about this week is Terminator Dark Fate. It's a movie that came out in 2019, so one of our more recent films to cover. We normally aren't able to make it that late and definitively know that it is the end of the franchise for a while, but here we are. Movie was directed by Tim Miller, who you'll know as the director of Deadpool. He's also done a lot of effects work previously before Deadpool. He was kind of mainly responsible for putting together that trailer that leaked that led to Deadpool actually being a thing, because it was the hardest thing to have that movie get greenlit at the time. Like no one wanted to do it because it's Deadpool's still, even though he's really a really popular comic book character, it was still niche. It was something that had to be rated R, which studios were still very skeptical about. So he and Ryan Reynolds, who had already been playing Deadpool in that horrible X-Men Origins movie,
Allegedly.
yeah. He was really wanting he and Tim Miller wanted the actual genuine article Deadpool, and put together that it was like the highway chase scene in that Deadpool movie, and Ryan Reynolds just leaked it even though they weren't allowed to, and that kind of like caught on like wildfire. So Tim Miller quickly became a name that a lot of studios wanted to get onto their projects, and turns out after Deadpool was a massive success, he was able to land that role as the director of this film, Terminator Dark Fate. He also did, I don't know if y'all have seen that. He's done I think a couple of episodes from Love, Death, and Robots, so I don't know if y'all have seen that.
Oh, yeah, I've seen a little bit of it.
Yeah. So what I would say is he has a small resume so far, but pretty proven as a talent. The movie stars Linda Hamilton, this is her first top billing in a movie ever. So she is technically the lead of this movie. Then we have Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mackenzie Davis, Natalia, yeah, I think it's Natalia Reyes, Gabriel Luna, Diego Boneta. Sorry, I butchered those names. But I think I was maybe 50-50 there. The movie is written by David Goyer, Justin Rhodes, Billy Ray, and then I put a ... James Cameron ? Because he was very much involved in this movie, much more so than the other sequels that happened after T2. In fact, there was a bunch of a lot of turmoil around the making of this movie, where Tim Miller had his vision, and James Cameron, who produced the movie, came in and was like, yes to that, no to that, yes to that, no to that. We got to change this. We got to do this. And Tim Miller was not happy with just that, I guess, working relationship. Even though I hear that they both still respect each other, but they would probably not work together again after this film. So that said, though, once this movie came out, it's kind of gone into James Cameron's headcanon as the sequel that he prefers the most out of, and he regards this one as the official T3, so to speak. So I'm not trying to shape anyone's opinion of this at all.
It didn't sound like it.
Yeah, I'm really not.
I know.
Because I have opinions on this movie, but that's just extra context to what we're talking about here. So,
But this is the official T3.
for him, like, I think anyone can have their own vision for how they see this series as canon. And actually, I'd love to talk about, like, what's your favorite Terminator canon? Like, out of all these films, like, which ones do you exile and which ones do you keep? So we'll see once the episode's done. Anyway, with those that are new to this show, on this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. I don't know, every time I do that rundown, I want to just speed through it faster and faster and faster. And I just end up tripping over it. AJ, had you seen Terminator Dark Fate before your prep for this episode?
Yeah, every time I watch this, it's like it goes faster and faster through the loop anyway. So I kind of have vague memories of this kind of badass chick going back in time or something, and got some robot augmentations, fights some other bad guys, and some time travel.
Wow, I'm glad you watched the right movie. That movie being Terminator Dark Fate.
What? I thought we're doing Edge of Tomorrow.
Well,
tell me I don't have to do this Edge of Tomorrow again.
I do have some good news for you. There's only one more episode in this miniseries to go, and that is, in fact, Edge of Tomorrow, so you will be more than prepared once that time comes.
Thank goodness.
Terminator Dark Fate, though, had you seen it?
I had not. Actually, I didn't even know this was out at all. I thought that Genesis was the latest one. So,
Oh, really? That just shows how much people stopped caring about Terminator.
Well, yeah, and then, the COVID years and all that stuff kind of time was wibbly wobbly. And
do you know what's pretty ironic? Or not ironic, but just unfortunate? This movie nabbed the spot that was originally going to be taken by Wonder Woman 1984. Is that what it's called? And Wonder Woman jumped into pandemic times, but this was before any of that had happened. And as a result, they both bombed. So it's like
lose-lose.
Like maybe Terminator should have kept its original position, and Wonder Woman should have also kept its original position.
Been scrapped.
Yeah, that movie's rough. Maybe someday we'll talk about DC. Well, I mean, we'll have to at some point.
Yeah, we will.
Honestly, when we do talk about DC, I think it'll be okay once the Snyderverse version of it is actually dead and it's this new thing.
Right.
Like DC,
I don't know what they're doing with the Black Adam stuff. I don't know.
It's hard to. They don't even know what they're doing. It's so confusing over there. Some of it wants to completely excise the Snyderness of everything, and some are like embracing it. So it's strange. I don't think they know what they're doing. David, how about you? Had you seen Terminator Dark Fate before this episode?
I have not, but I did see a very small portion at the gym when I was working out. I saw it on the TV screen, and I got to watch a good 15 minutes on the treadmill, so that was fun. Really ruined the movie for me.
Which 15 minutes was it?
The scene when they're in the hotel room right after they meet up with Sarah Connor for the first time. They're dumping ice on her. But also, the Alamo Draft House down here, they change out the wall, the mural on the wall.
Oh, it's so cool how they do it.
I remember Dark Fate being on there for
a long time.
It feels like a long time, yeah.
Well, because I think that's the last one they had painted up there on there before the pandemic, and then the theater closed, so they just kind of let it sit. Irina, had you seen Terminator Dark Fate before this episode?
Nope, but I remember seeing a trailer. It's kind of funny how I think the second half of my Terminator franchise experience has been just me seeing trailers and being like, oh, cool, and that's it. So
the trailer spoiling something.
Yeah, pretty
big.
much. I'm like, that's I get my 30 seconds of each movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was nice to see it this time.
Yep. It's funny. This is the first one that I don't think has a big like twist. So the trailers can't. They hate it. They can't spoil anything.
So mad.
Like, man, what are you talking about?
No.
There's no twist.
The twist for them is we get to show off Linda Hamilton.
Actually, honestly, the big twist is at the beginning of this movie. Never mind. There is one big twist in this movie, but it's very much That has to be the earliest twist ever in a movie for this one. We'll get to it.
Okay.
For me, I had seen this. I saw it in theaters. Yeah. Bought it on Blu-ray. Watched it again. And then saw it for this episode. So I've probably seen it 3 times. With that said, David, you want to give us that quick call to action?
Yeah, let me get into character real quick. Put it up the curtains.
Please don't do Danny.
Put up the curtains. All right. Drapery.
Is this Linda Hamilton?
Drapery.
All the people with the podcast, I'm doing Arnold this time because he is Carl. Carl has a family now. And just like family and putting up draperies for your surrogate family, you need to go out there and give us a 5-star review on Apple.
Why is it going to Australian? It always happens.
You got to go on an Australian accent whenever you want to get people to really rev up for it. Go down and put shrimp on the barbie and whatnot.
He's Austrian, not Australian. There's an extra syllable there.
Can you do the in Australian?
I know. It sounded like a dog. All right. Well, to be honest, it can't be done. What can be done, though, is people going out there spreading the word of our podcast because they like it so much, giving it a 5-star review on Apple because that's what goes beep boop, puts us right in front of the other podcasts out there so other people can enjoy us too. We also have an Instagram, a YouTube, and a Twitter, so check us out.
Also, we love and appreciate you.
Sometimes.
That's
all
new.
the time. With that said, let's get to the episode. David, you want to take it away with that story?
Mm-hmm.
2 days ago, I had this nice, simple life. And now it's a nightmare.
If travel is searching and home has been found, I'm not stopping.
Who are you?
My name is Sarah Connor. Never seen one like you before. Almost human.
I am human.
In 1998, 3 years after destroying Cyberdyne Systems, Sarah and John Connor are enjoying life by a beach in Livingston, Guatemala, when they are suddenly ambushed by a T-800 Terminator. One of several sent back through time by Skynet, the Terminator kills John and leaves, despite Sarah's attempts to stop it. In 2020, an advanced Terminator, the Rev-9, is sent back in time to Mexico City to murder Dani Ramos, while a cybernetically enhanced soldier, Grace, is sent from 2042 to protect her. The Rev-9, disguised as Danny's father, infiltrates the automobile assembly plant where Danny and her brother Diego work, but is thwarted by Grace, who escapes with the siblings. The Rev-9, using its ability to split into 2 distinct entities, its cybernetic endoskeleton and shape-shifting liquid metal exterior, pursues them, killing Diego and cornering Grace and Danny. However, Sarah arrives and temporarily disables both entities using military-grade weaponry. Danny, Grace, and Sarah retreat to a motel. Sarah reveals that she has found them because the year since John's death, she has received encrypted messages detailing the locations of arriving Terminators, each ending with "For John," allowing her to destroy them before they become threats. Grace notes that Skynet and John do not exist in her future, and thus Sarah has succeeded in destroying the former after Cyberdyne went defunct. However, humanity's future is threatened by another AI called Legion, originally developed for cyber warfare. This system is built in Skynet's place. When Legion becomes a threat to humans, an attempt was made to neutralize it with nuclear weapons, resulting in nuclear holocausts, and the AI creating a global network of machines to terminate the human survivors. The survivors then organize as the human resistance to counter Legion's onslaughts, and Danny's destiny is linked to their war against it. Sounds familiar.
Little. One big change, though, this movie begins with, you think it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same, here's a old Terminator battle in future times. You see the Terminators rising from the ocean, which is a pretty cool, eerie image. But it turns out to just be the vision of Sarah Connor. And she's on the beach with her son, John Connor. By the way, this has got to be some of the best de-aging I've ever seen. Did y'all take note of that?
Like, yeah.
It is almost, it's at that Marvel level where they've just figured it out.
Yeah.
I know, to make Christian Bale look like that young little boy.
They did such a good job.
Yeah. But I was real, despite what happens, I was real impressed with just the CGI, which is weird because there's CGI moments in this movie later on that don't look that great. But here it's on point. The money is there.
The thing is, the only thing that's happening for me is that I know there's CGI being done because there's no other explanation. Mm-hmm. And so you're kind of trying to look for the problems. And they're like very, very minor details that you can tell it's de-aging. But I don't know. It's so small that it doesn't even I don't know. It doesn't even bother me.
Yeah. Well, and I felt the same with
Tron Legacy. Yeah.
No. So I have two very distinctive camps. There's the Marvel and this one in the successful camp. Mm-hmm. Marvel, the way they de-aged Ant-Man. What's his name?
Paul Rudd?
No, Michael
Keaton?
No. I don't know. Anyway, Hank Pym in that movie, the way they de-aged him. Shut up. Yes, you're right.
What the heck? You were so ready to tell me to shut up before you even shut up.
Michael Douglas. And Robert Downey Jr. All the other ones they de-aged was so good, and then this one I put in that same camp. Yes, there's still the slight 0.1% uncanny, but you're willing to give it a pass.
Oh yeah.
What about The Irishman?
That's when we get to our other camp.
All right.
I think in the other camp we have Tron Legacy, we have Star Wars, Rogue One especially, where you see Tarkin and Princess Leia, and it just looks way off. It just does not look right.
I remember sitting there in the theater going, "Don't make her turn around! Don't make her turn around!" And they did, and I was like, "Oh no!"
Here, my issue with that scene is it looks fine if she doesn't say anything.
Yeah,
and I'm like, she doesn't need to say anything.
No,
in that
she
scene.
doesn't.
It can just cut. Just seeing her is fine. Yes, it still looks a little weird, but it's when they make her lips move that I'm like, ugh. No. It's just not. It's
not quite there yet.
Yeah, and same with Irishman. While it works okay when they make Robert De Niro's character middle-aged young, but when they try to make him look like he's in his 20s, when he's in the war or all that stuff, it does not look right. Because and it's two different approaches, because I think they have for these ones it's actually motion capture performance, and they're doing the actual some de-aging process to their face, whereas the other ones are ground up CGI from the ground up, CGI recreations.
Thank you for the clarification there.
Yeah.
Grinding up young people's faces and
and reconstructing them.
So with this one, do they have body doubles too, or is it?
Actually, they had Edward Furlong come back for the role.
Which is so weird to me.
It's so weird, yeah, but they did it. But anyway, we get our biggest twist right up from the top, which I'm surprised wasn't spoiled in the trailers, at least not to my knowledge. But John Connor is shotgun blasted to the chest two times by Arnold Schwarzenegger, who, another good recreation, though you can tell the body's different because they used a body double. But I think this is what divides people on this movie. This movie gets a lot of flack for it's basically spitting in the face of the John Connor is our savior type thing.
I think some people think that.
Yeah, but how did y'all feel about this surprising death?
I have a hot take.
Go ahead.
My hot take is that I never really cared for John ever. And I was more than okay with the direction they chose because he had his time in the sun for 5 movies.
Yeah.
Most of which were great. and the thing is, it makes it work because they already solved the timeline. But what I think is cool, not only that he gets to die, I get to see Edward Furlong finally die, I actually really enjoy the fact that no matter what humanity does, it always ends up creating a killer AI. Like, it's our inevitable fate, our dark fate, if you will.
Yep.
And I think that's super cool.
They do use that word fate throughout the Terminator movies as well. That's where the movie gets its title. Like, I originally thought it was kind of a dorky title, but I'm like, oh no, it actually makes sense. As I've been watching these movies, they reference like this dark fate or whatever, so it's kind of cool. Arena, AJ, what are y'all's thoughts on this this opening?
I'm in agreement with David on this one. I think it's kind of a necessary change to flip the script from the beginning instead of kind of wait for a little twist at the end, which would seem a little childish.
Yeah.
Following the narrative a little too closely from the beginning. So I liked that they did that because then I'm suddenly hooked. I'm like, okay, where are they going to take this exactly since they're changing up the whole savior story anyway?
AJ?
I'm mixed. You know, I think, you know, in order to add another iteration to, some might say, unnecessary, you know, prolonging of this franchise, you have to change things up quite drastically. So this furthers that goal. I can see why people will be upset, you know, having been kind of, especially if you grew up with the first two, you're invested in John Connor. I can understand that a little bit. For me, it was kind of, you know, just thinking about this right now, actually, there's a little bit of parallels. I don't know if it's intentional, you know, with the nightmare dream sequence that opens up the, you know, the classic ones with the burning children in the playground.
Classic.
You know, Sarah Connor's nightmare's always been, you know, some version of children dying, and this is like the ultimate realization of that.
Yeah.
You know, she was able to, you know, bypass or stave off that future, but it was inevitable and it eventually concentrated to her own son.
Yeah.
So it's it definitely grips you right off the bat.
It also helps make her appearance in this movie and her actions more believable. As like, this is just what I do now is kill Terminators infinitely,
which is great. And I also want to say though that if you go back, John Connor is supposed to be the savior. He's supposed to be the person we think of when we think of Terminator, but honestly, it's never really been that. It's always been Sarah Connor to me.
Yeah.
So seeing her in this movie was way more impactful than trying to create a new John Connor. I think her presence has way more weight. So I was a little more excited than I have been since T2. So
yeah, and I'll agree. Although my stance is a little different, I think I would have been really bothered with the killing of John Connor had there only been the first 2 movies.
Yeah.
And then their next movie was to be like, well, we're killing John Connor. Like,
yeah, they already killed everything else in this franchise.
Yeah. But the fact that they've taken so many stabs at this thing to try and like flip the script, I'm like, yeah, sure, let's see what happens if you kill John Connor and see how that plays out.
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
I mean, it's all like
Mixomatic.
just multiple universes anyway. Like,
I mean,
what does this one look like?
he did his thing. John Connor saved the universe.
yeah, we had a whole movie with just John Connor and Terminator Salvation. We saw how amazing that was. But
I say they should have brought Edward Furlong back, and then the whole movie he was John Connor, and then he died at the end.
yeah, well, if you saw how Edward Furlong looked at the time, or at least what he was going through,
Not so
I don't
hot.
know. He's much better in much better shape now, but he was he was coming off of a drug problem, I think, and
Pulling a Macaulay Culkin on us, huh?
yeah, sure. I don't think Macaulay Culkin was ever like that hugely bad, but that is a tangent we do not need to go on.
Allegedly.
So we're introduced to a new, not a Terminator, but a enhanced human in the form of Mackenzie Davis's. I don't know if she has a model name. It's more, she's just a human who's been enhanced and sent back. They're getting worse and worse about finding locations for these spheres to drop. She's in the middle of a highway, hits a few bars on the way down, and lands. Pretty rough.
It is cool, kind of, you don't know what things are in different times, so who's to say even what elevation you're at? It's always before, you're on the ground. How does that work?
Yeah.
Here, it's like literally in the middle, like cutting things out. I thought that was...
It is cool.
Finally, acknowledgement.
It's a nice touch.
And I must say, I really like Mackenzie Davis in this. Maybe she might be my favorite of the cast, honestly.
Wow.
That's bold.
And it's only happened after rewatching it, I feel like, a few times. We'll talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton. I think they're all kind of vying for the top spot for me, actually, if I'm actually thinking about it realistically. Danny's kind of under that
I
level.
actually felt a little more strongly about Danny than I expected to.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. This will be interesting. I can't wait for our scores on this one. This will be interesting.
I have a feeling it's going to be all across the board.
It might be a bloodbath. We'll see. But I really like Mackenzie Davis. I think she is, for one, she's tall. And two, she's in real good shape. So you believe that she could, as an augmented human, like she's believable in these action sequences. I like her sizing up the boyfriend and like, yep, that's my size, versus going for the girl's clothes. It's like, no, you're more accurately
proportioned
like my
to
type.
myself.
I would argue they didn't try to sexualize her at all.
No,
Yeah.
And she's not your typical look for a action heroine, but I think whatever she's doing here kind of
It's
works
working.
For me. Like I like it. But now we are introduced to Danny, played by Natalia Reyes, and she's got a brother who's like he wants to. He like
makes
singing.
music.
Yeah,
He likes singing. That's what I thought when I saw him.
they're singing and sandwich making at their place, and
Man, you nailed this one.
I mean that's all I got from that dynamic there. They do the whole like half speak in Spanish and then speak in English just because they know that we're dumb Americans. But they're like, also, this is authentic. So yeah, there's that.
It seemed authentic. I don't know.
Yeah, Danny and her brother work at this a car plant area.
They build cars.
It's a car plant.
And yeah, I guess we can talk about Natalia Reyes. Some of y'all like her, I take it?
I think at first she's kind of just a blank canvas for me. I didn't really know whether I liked her or not. She was just, a main character.
Acting was fine, but nothing to really go
Yeah,
off of.
and that's mostly because of the sequence of events. You're like, okay, family, got a brother, got a father, blah, blah, blah. And it's more so kind of the way they directed her character later in the movie that I appreciated. So
Yeah.
Well, and for me... Sorry, go ahead, AJ.
Well, I was just going to say, I felt like she was neutral in the sense of genuineness. And it lent itself towards that a little bit. And it kind of got you on board with her story arc of being just this complete nobody, fresh person.
right.
Yeah.
Coming into this, prophecy or
Well,
whatever, what have you.
Well, it's the first time they've sort of drawn a parallel with Linda Hamilton's character all the way back to T1. And I felt very similarly with Sarah Connor in the first movie as I did with Danny in this one, where I'm like, I don't really know what to feel.
Yeah.
The acting's not amazing. It's not bad, but it's very neutral.
Yeah.
And you have to get, I think what this movie benefits for Danny is because we had Linda Hamilton's character to sort of base our feelings off of, we see where she's going and we can make that jump a little more easily, I think.
So if this were to get a sequel, then you would see that breakout, like Linda Hamilton-esque performance.
And they tried to bring it into this one, which I think may or may not have hurt it. But
well, they did in the first one too, because Linda Hamilton starts to have her big action moment, crushing the Terminator and whatnot.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, you're right. In this one, it's a little try hard on the.
I'm talking about like the future things where they kind of showcase her in the future.
That's right. Yeah, with Mackenzie Davis as well.
As a kid,
that stuff I found forgettable, but we'll get to that.
Could be for the best.
Yeah.
The Rev 9, played by Diego Luna,
Dude, he does an excellent job.
Yeah.
by the
So
way.
good.
also spawns in the middle of the air, but lands perfectly, superhero landing, and quickly infiltrates the household, or I'll just call it the flat or the apartment, wherever they are. And
Apartment complex.
takes out the father. I mean, off screen, but like,
He's
hey,
dead.
kind of cool, a chilling scene that was very reminiscent of the T-1000 scenes in the T2, where he's like, "Oh, I'm a friend of Daniela's," and he's like, "Only no one calls her that. Only her friends call her Danny or whatever." And you're like, "All right, you're dead. Bye bye."
Excellent job of remanifesting the T.
Yep.
T-1000.
Yeah. So we then see the Rev 9, who is now taken on the form of the father, arrives at Danny's and her brother's workplace with lunch. Like, oh, you forgot lunch. But obviously they soon figure out that this is not the dad, as Mackenzie Davis's character. What is her name in this? I should know.
Grace.
Yeah, Grace comes in with a shotgun. Very cool scene. What I like and don't like about this movie is this Terminator never feels like he's completely on top of things, because he is constantly getting shot and beat up and hit. It's more just it recovers from all these massive beatings that it takes.
Yeah.
But it's
a scramble.
Yeah. But it is so cool to see the shock on Danny's face as her father gets slowly obliterated, but the skull underneath is kind of revealed, and it's like, oh, that's not right.
my father.
So now we get a taste of this movie, how it's going to handle action. What do y'all think about this first action sequence and this kind of turn of events here at this point?
Personally, I liked it a lot. I thought it was really cool. I thought getting to see Grace fight with this new version of the Terminator, who, off the bat, I was like, this guy is bringing it 110%. He looks like his facial gestures are made for the T-1000. Like, he's modeling after T2 really well. But the action sequences are really good. The CGI, I would say, is really, really good. And
I think there's one dodgy scene where he's running after them and he jumps into this area and then dives down on them. That looked really bad.
I think what you're, and I don't know if this is true, but it seemed like what was weird for me was the physics sometimes seemed weird.
Yeah,
but I think it was a style choice of how the robot moves, not a CGI issue.
That kind of thing popped up every now and then for me, where it's almost like the CGI people or robots looked like they were given sort of the Rubber Man treatment, where they sort of bent in a way that wasn't quite human. But that's like it's one of those things where I just gloss over it because it's an action film, like, and it's barely noticeable. So
one of my, despite some of the dodgy CGI, one of my favorite moves in this action sequence is seeing Grace use that sledgehammer on its leg, crippling it, and then hitting it in the head and just like beating its head into the ground. And then its head attaches to the hammer and she pulls it up, and then it's like...
I think that the fun thing about this movie is you get to see a little more of the scrappiness of kind of a human, albeit augmented human, trying to defeat a Terminator. Yeah. Instead of the more like just brutal guns blazing, which we'll see later with, you know, Linda Hamilton. But I think I like her determination and sort of like, oh yeah, I'm just going to sacrifice myself at any possible moment if I know that it will get, you know, her to safety. So I like Mackenzie Davis. Was that it?
Yep. Mackenzie Davis.
No, I like her for that part. I think she does a really good job with that kind of just almost frenzied but calculated way of trying to help her survive.
Yeah. AJ, any thoughts at this point?
I guess I'm a little less optimistic or positive on Mackenzie Davis's Grace. Like, you know, the action, the first fights are good, and the sledgehammer is pretty cool. But as far as like delivery and kind of cadence and just kind of meshing with the rest of like with what's her name?
Danny.
Yeah. I mean, it was just like, it seemed like, I mean, it was obviously parallel to Kyle Reese from the first one. But they kind of tread the same like personality almost,
Right.
except this, Grace here can actually fight. I don't know. I feel like the stiffness and the stuff wasn't my favorite thing.
Mhm.
I think probably the strongest suit so far, at least, is just the new Terminator here.
Yeah.
And I think that performance is like the perfect blend of the T-1000 from T2 and the kind of nanotech from, what was it?
T5.
Genesis. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of that, so we do have our what's now just a necessity checkbox in all Terminator movies are the street chase with a big vehicle versus a smaller vehicle in which our heroes are occupying. One of my issues with this movie is just how, while it is doing things different, it is basically the same framework of a Terminator movie. So that I think that's both a positive and a negative, because you know exactly what you're getting. Yet this is an entertaining sequence. It's a good display of what this new Terminator brings to the table. The Rev 9 is, and we should get like an official Terminator ranking of how much we like these designs. The Rev 9 does what I kind of wanted the Terminator in Terminator 3 to be, where that was a half liquid, half actual physical skeleton
It
Terminator.
would seem like the next natural
I
progression.
think they said ceramic.
Yeah, why can't they split apart and be two Terminators? And this one finally is like, aha, yeah, let's do that.
The T-1000, but it does more.
Yeah, well, the idea that you can have two Terminators working in tandem together that both have different consistencies and abilities is inherently a cool idea.
It's the splitting of the organic and the machine,
Right.
Yeah.
but working in tandem.
Yes. So I'm pretty high on the Rev 9 design. Where are we at in terms of these Terminator designs? How do we rank these?
We're gonna do it right now. We're gonna rank them.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it right now. Unless y'all aren't ready, because that's a lot of Terminators to think about.
I got to think about it.
Yeah, I
let's
gotta
talk
think
about
about
the
We'll
end.
think about it. But I guess we can just take the temperature. Is this higher on your list or lower on your list? Do you like where
Higher.
higher?
Yeah.
It's higher. I think it's also just from a design standpoint, not just its function, but the way it looks is a lot more legible
Yeah.
than some of the previous iterations that were given to us. So
Yeah.
already on that point, I like it a lot better.
Yeah.
And the
And
skeleton.
it's not
form,
muddled
too.
with this. Yeah, it's not muddled with this, abomination of what John Connor was.
Right.
Like, I really like that Terminator design in Genesis, especially the technology and stuff, but it's this awful version of John Connor and kind
Right.
of ruins it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and while I did like the Terminator 3 design, it almost seemed gimmicky in like a Swiss Army knife type of way. It's like, oh, I've got a gun and I've got a flamethrower and I've got all these other things.
Right.
But somehow still more limited than the other ones.
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah. And Terminator 4, I kind of appreciate Terminator 4 how they're all these like older models that are just
Right.
like here's a look through the Terminator history of all these crappier designs. Kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rev 9's super cool. I think there's some people that criticize it, and I don't understand why. I'm like, no, I get it. It's like that.
I thought it was spot on.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. How could you? I mean, like, I guess you could criticize anything.
There's people
but-
that still find it gimmicky, and I don't find it to be gimmicky. I think it is the next natural step. Like if what is better than a T-1000 than a T-1000 plus the other physical form along with it, and they can combine.
Well,
like it's
let's, for the people out there who haven't seen this, and I don't know why you're listening to this if you haven't, but the Rev 9 has the same liquid form that you see. It's very reminiscent of the T-1000 from T2, but some of the abilities that you don't see in that one is he can literally touch fabric and get the clothing on his skin, which is super cool. His ability to understand, in my opinion, they don't really go into this, but in this movie, he seems to understand the language of every person he takes and knows what their work is. So he, like, if he goes to a military complex, he has all of that knowledge. So
also it's the first one where the skeleton is like dark gray.
I thought that was
Like-
super cool.
Yeah, I'm like, that looks cool. And it has this, like, I had never thought about it, but it doesn't even have anything inside its skull. It's just this big open
back
cavity where I'm like,
it's the first one. I'm like, that one is definitely different than the other ones.
yeah. So yeah, we have the big highway chase scene. The brother is killed pretty brutally. car blows. For that, actually, I take that back. This movie's rated R, but there's very few scenes where it actually feels rated R. Like it really doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel much more intense than any of the previous Terminator movies that were PG-13. Did y'all get that impression? Like it's flaunting this R rating. Like, all right, back to basics. But to me, it didn't really feel that much more intense.
Wonder if it's because of the killing of the young child John Connor in the movie.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, like there was blood, but
And then you see Danny's brother die, and after that, not as much.
they do drop a lot of F-bombs though, so I'll give them that. Like, which is not really why I come to my R-rated movies, but sure. We have a big after the death. Let's talk about the Linda Hamilton's entrance as Sarah Connor, coming in and out of nowhere as these Terminators are encroaching on Grace and Danny's position. She has what is that? I don't know what it is. It's this massive gun that's just shooting shells at this thing's head.
She likes massive guns.
Yeah, and that the Terminator the liquid version of the Terminator falls over the bridge, and then she pulls out a rocket launcher or a grenade launcher and shoots the physical Terminator, and it's blasted into the windshield of a car. And then she casually says, "I'll be back."
Yeah.
Which
I like it.
I like how she's
like it a
sort
lot.
of like a new iteration of the Terminator, or at least Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator, because she's coming in just with a gun, walking slowly towards her target, blasting them away. I'll be back. A very casual, like...
It's the only time they've recycled a line in any of these sequels where I was like, I'll accept it.
I'll accept that one. Yeah.
Where it doesn't feel like overly...
It's more like she's just tired.
Yeah.
You know?
I felt like it could have been saved for a more appropriate time, but it was fine.
It's like we're getting it out of the way now.
When I say that it didn't take me out of the movie, whereas in other times they do it, it's like, ugh.
You didn't groan.
Yeah.
It's almost supposed to be, it feels like it's supposed to be a cheering moment when she shows up for the first time, where everyone's like, whoa, and she's just, I'll be back. And everyone's just hyped that she's here.
So guys, is she back? Are y'all glad she's back? Does Linda Hamilton bring it?
I think so.
She
I like
brought
her.
it.
Yeah.
I think most of my issues come with the integration with the other characters. I think Linda Hamilton is fine, and I like her character. She's a little more brash than I would have expected. Like there were moments where I kind of wanted her to seem a little more calculated, I guess observant.
Yeah.
And she wasn't. So that's more of a character problem than a Linda Hamilton problem.
Yeah, I think what I'm picking up there is, I get that she's like kind of jaded and just like numb from the death of her son and kind of everything collapsed, but I didn't feel the emotional side of that exhaustion. Like, she just seemed more like grizzled, and it just kind of came off more, unfortunately, like, not washed up, but what the situation is. It's like same thing with Harrison Ford and pulling him into Indiana Jones or whatever else. Or Han Solo, like he's just, too old to come back to this role. And I feel like this was borderline for that situation here.
Yeah.
For me. Like she performed admirably, and she's still like, badass and stuff, but there's times where it's like, okay, I need a little bit more dynamic, emotional, I guess.
Yeah. I actually think she fared, and I see your point with the Harrison Ford there. I think she fared a lot better than he did in that movie. And I think it's because I think the character choice here is she is masking this pain with anger. Like it is, she just seems like a very angry individual throughout this. And I see it as a bit of a coping mechanism for her, where it's like, my drive is just killing Terminators, and that is the only thing that keeps me from thinking about anything else that has happened.
I guess when she's being that way, which is like, I'm fine with a character being, angry and then kind of using that anger to cover up or mask certain emotions, but they tried to end up making Grace kind of that way too. And so in my mind, they were just both competing for that role, and I didn't get to see chemistry between the two. at any point. So I think that kind of rubbed me the wrong way because it felt like they were both sort of quipping the same kind of lines back and forth to each other.
So would you have preferred a cut Grace out and have just the two of them, kind of like a lone wolf and cub with the older and then Danny as in this like, oh, I guess I have to accept you as the new John Connor / daughter figure? Or
I like the idea of Grace.
Yeah.
I just think there's something needs to be tweaked with the way they were written together.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do not mesh character-wise. And I think, there's probably some intentional symbolism there or parallels. But I think they could have been a little bit more on the nose about Sarah Connor has now become the Terminator.
Yeah. Right.
That is what she is. Her identity is terminating and just destroying. And if she had a bit more of a redemption in discovering Danny as like her new daughter, surrogate,
right?
Foster daughter,
Kindred
whatever,
spirit.
Adopted daughter. Yeah, like I think Grace gets in the way of that. I really think that she does, and unfortunately,
she also drives the plot to where the destinations they need to go. Though, it's complicated.
It is.
So we also once these three characters are united, there's some struggle there because Grace drives off with her vehicle. Then we learn that Grace is like a depleted power. She has to go recharge. Sarah Connor catches up with them. There's a brief little tussle. They figure their stuff out, and then it's onward with the plot.
I feel like when you say that she had to recharge, she was dying.
Well, no, she's just depleted.
Well, how do you feel about this plot device where she kind of has this complete exhaustion of energy? Her metabolism is so supposedly sped up. She has to take these, she almost has these, I don't say epileptic fits, but almost spasmodic.
Yeah.
Just complete total breakdown failures. So she takes these injections.
I like it.
I don't know. I felt like that. Oh, yeah, the first time, but I felt like that plot device got tried too quickly.
Yeah, I think it's important in that it adds tension to the action sequences because while she is at her peak good enough to fight the Rev 9, you're constantly thinking about, how much juice does she have left? But yeah, towards the end, it's like, okay, enough of this. Let's just have fun. Yeah, I'm positive on it, but not
the practicality. It maybe is just my, that's dumb. Like, this does not have a combat application. You would never make someone just like a glass cannon like that where they, if they're supposed to be this fighter in this military, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like a huge Achilles heel for me. I don't know.
It does seem like something humans would do in sort of an intro stage to trying to make a human part robotic. I mean, there's got to be a transition.
The augmentation, yes, but you're right.
I think it's good,
experimental,
but it does get tried multiple times in this, which I think the first time, obviously, they really harp on it, and then luckily she has her medication ready to go throughout the movie, so it's like got her inhaler ready to go.
That'd be fun. I just want to see the spoof of this. She's just
1 second. Gotta catch my breath.
All right, so this is where we learn that Sarah Connor's been receiving these texts from an unknown location, but it's giving the coordinates to where the next Terminator will appear, and then ends the text with "for John." So they track. This is where I get a little confused because they go to see
the chip bag.
Yeah, they go
that
to see.
Was funny.
Yeah,
I like that.
They go to see Danny's uncle. Then they are like they have to cross the border. They jump on a train. Then they go to see Danny's uncle, and he says something, and then they have to cross back.
Sure does.
Yeah. There's a slow-mo scene of her slicing a fly in half. That's kind of interesting.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
I'm getting just kind of tired of there's something about Grace's character that's a little bit too show-offy,
unfocused.
Like, yeah, it's like she's on this really important mission, but she still takes the time to kind of like, I don't know, piss people off for some reason or show off her abilities or like
I never saw it as her showing
no
off.
it's some there's like an attitude that she has that's
she's
a
got
little
a chip on her shoulder.
that doesn't
sure.
really make sense to me for someone that was sent back solely to
Well, if I
save
remember,
someone.
if I remember correctly, that scene where she slices the fly in half, it was after they were trying to convince the uncle that, hey,
Yeah.
we actually really need help.
Also, robots.
I get
And they sell the crazy premise of what's been happening, and then
Yeah.
she's like, "Oh, I just sliced a fly in half in
it's
front
like
of you."
I get that, but it's when that is combined with all these scenes between her and the rest of the characters where like, oh, she grabs Sarah Connor's phone and like taps her finger to the back of it and she's like, what are you doing?
Future.
And I'm just
Yeah.
like, can
No,
we like
I didn't like that line.
scrap these
I was
weird
okay with it.
this weird energy between you two and just
that- I
focus
think
on
that's
the
the
problem at
problem.
hand? Like,
Well,
yeah, it's some of it is, she's got this intense blind devotion to Danny, which we don't even understand
yeah,
why. Like, yeah, she's going to be important, but the level of, single-minded devotion is very reminiscent of Kyle Reese in the first one. Like, he's in love with this Polaroid photograph of
right.
Sarah Connor. Is kind of just dumb and creepy.
That's all you need.
And this just kind of ramps it up to 11 in that sense. Like, I mean, we learn later that she's like the salvation of everything,
Right,
but
right.
it doesn't, I don't know. It's not a gradual
Yeah.
gradient of that,
Yeah.
that relationship.
Yeah.
Well, and then you have I think honestly, the whole back and forth with Grace and Sarah Connor the whole time is just so drawn out. Where it's like, okay, I get it in the beginning because Sarah Connor is
Yeah,
kind of an
yeah.
ass sometimes, and it makes sense with her character.
Yeah.
And then you think you would work through it after the first 5 minutes of them meeting, like, oh,
Yeah.
we're both trying to work on the same thing. Oh, you're a Terminator. I'm also a badass. Like, let's work together.
Once
But
they
they're
get
fighting the
to
whole
the
movie.
Once they get not the whole movie. Once they get to the helicopter and that helicopter scene where Danny's like, "No, we got to wait for Sarah Connor," and they finally board the helicopter. That's when Sarah Connor is finally like, "Yeah, you probably should have left me." And then from that moment, they start to be more of a unit that is not.
Yeah.
They're together versus fighting.
They have the common goal. They
Yeah.
know that
Yeah.
they're on the same page or same direction.
It just
Yeah.
took a while.
Yeah, and to zip the plot towards that area, because I feel like we can just kind of gloss over some of this.
Yeah.
They cross the border, and then there's the Border Patrol. The movie's trying to make some sort of statement, I'm sure. I just didn't try to look too deep into it. But then they're taken to kind of where, like, immigrant prison, I guess. Like,
Detainees.
yeah, detainees.
They're detainees. Yeah.
And obviously not a good place for them to be. There's also a drone strike at this point where the Rev 9 is, like, I guess, hacked into their system, kills a couple of dudes. That was probably the most brutal scene when he dispatches those 3 people that are, like, working at the control panel.
Where I
Yeah.
think that guy's like, oh, leave it to Border Patrol to show up 5 minutes late. And they're like,
Yeah.
hey, shut up, man. And then just like stabs him right
Yeah.
through the chest.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
whoa.
It's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
So now it becomes a race for them to get out of this facility. We see a couple of cool. They do manage to get out, and we see a couple of cool Rev 9 moments where he just, like, why didn't the T-1000 do that? Is what I thought went, like, creating the spikes, just coming out, just killing all these guards as he's walking through. That I thought were pretty cool. And they just barely escape in this helicopter as the Rev 9's coming. They wait for. I know I'm not getting this perfectly right. And there's things I'm getting wrong. I'm just trying to catch us up in the plot since we're behind time-wise. But they just barely manage to escape. Sarah Connor makes it to the helicopter just as the Rev 9's about to grab her. And of course, the Rev 9's next solution is, I need to get a chopper. He adopts the
Whirly bird.
yeah,
Whirly
whirly
bird.
bird.
there, Willy birds.
Coffee. That's a reference to our Rampage episode.
Oh,
Good stuff.
gosh.
Yeah. But he does not get a whirly bird. He gets a big plane, I think, right?
Well,
Are we there yet? I guess we're there yet.
he gets 2 different aircrafts at different points.
Yeah, and I want to credit Diego Luna again or Gabriel Luna. Sorry, he is doing a really good job at this Terminator role. Perhaps the best of all the sequels after 2. I still want to give Kristanna Loken some credit though. In T3, she's really good, but I still think this guy tops her. What do y'all think?
Well, it's kind of hard to say whether it's the writing of this Terminator. I couldn't remember the Rev 9.
Yeah, it's hard. It's all numbers, and
I honestly think that both she and he are really good in the roles they were given. I think they make great Terminators, but this guy just seems to have a little more time showcasing kind of the resourcefulness of this one, and just sort of that coldness, but also being chummy is really chilling.
Yeah.
So I think there was more at play with this one, for sure.
Yeah.
I think I need to read the next part of the plot, by the way. I think we're already past
Oh,
it.
good. Yeah, cool. I was just like blasting through the whole thing. By the way, just to correct myself, this was not the point where he got a plane. He also got a helicopter, the Rev 9.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
So
chase
yeah,
scenes in
I was completely wrong about it. It's later when they commandeer the planes. So go ahead with the second portion of that plot.
All right. Grace traces Sarah's messages to Laredo, Texas, barely evading the Rev 9 and the authorities while crossing the Mexico-United States border. They arrive at their source where they discover the same T-800 that had murdered John. Having fulfilled its mission, with Skynet no longer existing, the T-800 was left aimless. Through learning, however, it became self-aware. During that time, it learned from humanity and developed a conscience, taking the name Carl and adopting a human family. After learning how its actions affected Sarah and being able to detect the location of temporal displacements, Carl decided to forewarn her of them and give her purpose to make amends. Carl offers to join them against the Rev 9, and they prepare to destroy it, with Sarah begrudgingly agreeing to work together for Danny's sake. Anticipating the Rev 9's arrival, Carl bids its family farewell and tells them to escape. They seek out a military-grade electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, generator from an acquaintance of Sarah's. The Rev 9 catches up with them, forcing them to steal a plane to escape, though the EMP generators are destroyed in the resulting shootout. During the flight, Grace reveals the Rev 9's motive that Danny becomes the future founding commander of the Resistance who destroyed Legion. The Rev 9 boards their airplane and temporarily subdues Carl, forcing Grace, Sarah, and Danny to parachute from the plane into a river near a hydroelectric plant, with Carl and the Rev 9 following close behind. Bludgeoned, the group makes its stand inside the plant. In the ensuing battle, Carl and Grace force the Rev 9 into a spinning turbine, causing an explosion that critically damages the two Terminators, while mortally wounding Grace. The severely damaged Rev 9 endoskeleton incapacitates Sarah, forcing Danny to confront it herself. A dying Grace tells Danny to use her power source to destroy the Rev 9. Danny tries to fight it, but is quickly overpowered. Carl reactivates itself and restrains the Rev 9, allowing Danny to stab it with Grace's power source. Carl drags itself and the Rev 9 over a ledge right before the power core explodes, destroying them both. Sometime later, Danny and Sarah watch a young Grace at the playground with her family. The former determined to avert Grace's death in Legion's rise. Sarah then tells Danny she needs to get ready with Grace, watching as the pair drive off.
So once they're finished with their little helicopter travel, they and I know we're mixed up in the plot here, but they jump in a pickup. I'm probably getting this all wrong, but they drive to the location or I guess the coordinates that they were given, and they find Arnold Schwarzenegger, who is now Carl, or the T-800.
Carl.
And he has a drapery company. If there's two things that divided people on this movie, it was the killing of John Connor and also the treatment of the Terminator in this. And at least I think these are the two like controversial talking points.
That's how I felt when I got to that point. I was like, there are going to be people who are really mad at this.
Yeah, where either it really works for you or it doesn't.
I'm still not sure how I feel about it at this moment.
It works for me. I love it.
I'm in the camp of it works for me as well. But Irina, I do, what and AJ, where are you at? And then we'll kind of break it down.
Somewhat I'd say it works mostly.
Okay. Irina, I'm curious about your thoughts while you're wrestling with it.
So I could see it working in my mind, but it feels like just such a just a little too cute of a package,
Yeah.
to explain how he got to this point now. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just odd.
Yeah, growing a conscience and all that stuff is still like very major
Yeah.
complications into
So I think for me it was
continuity and stuff.
it was a struggle just because it was so abrupt, and it's just like, oh yeah, I grew a conscience, and now I know what it felt like for you to lose your son.
So
moving on.
way better than Pops, though.
Before you go too far in that direction, he does have this scene though where he's like, I cannot cry, but I understand why you do.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's trying to dodge him actually having true feelings, but understanding as a program why people have feelings.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of skirting the edge there.
Right.
Well, it's like one of those sociopaths that are functioning in society where they can't feel the same emotions, but you'll hear they talk about how they learn the right and wrong things, and like, I know I don't feel the same way, but I understand why.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I also love that scene where he gets shot in the chest, and I don't know what his wife's name is, but he's like, "This will be hard to explain to Alicia."
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that's her name.
Yeah, that's her name.
I thought that was a great line. He just like stares at it.
I like him in this part, but it's something where I feel like I have to watch this a couple more times before I, assimilate into this portrayal.
He also needs to shake off that mantle a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And get back, knock off the rust and get back into action earlier.
Old but not obsolete.
One of the most interesting things about this movie though is, what does a Terminator do after it accomplishes its mission? Like that's never been
They
explored.
just wander.
It's interesting. Like it
Reprogrammed.
Yeah, and I guess it here's I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Well, it's kind of a functioning creature still, I think, and I like the fact that there is a concept that it can grow a conscience just by existing.
you would have imagined they'd have a shutdown program. Like, okay, once you did that, all right, shut down.
The T-800 seems like the first prototype version of this, and maybe afterwards they did.
Yeah,
But his seems like an early version.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Also, like, what? Okay, a Terminator kills early John Connor. Then what does humanity do with that Terminator? I mean, aren't you sending back very valuable tech from the future for people to use? I don't know. That we don't have to open that up. But
I mean, the time travel in this is probably the most. I think this introduces a lot of complications to the time travel stuff more than any of the other movies.
Even more than 5?
I do. I think so. Because there's a lot of new information that isn't necessarily corroborated by the other movies, but it does a neat job of sidestepping it. So
I will say, here's what I'll say. It is more complicated. I think this movie's better at streamlining its plot, though, whereas Genesis was just like time stuff.
Right.
Just
you're right.
Yeah.
If this one was complicated, they put it in a neat little package for my simple brain to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the smart thing about the Terminator franchise is I think it wants you to meet it at the level of, hey, time stuff is happening, but it doesn't want you to go much farther than
Don't think
that.
about the implications.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really do like these scenes, though, with, like, Linda Hamilton is able to flex her acting muscles here, trying to deal with the fact that this is the Terminator that killed my son.
Yeah.
But we have to work with him. I like that scene with her and Danny. I like the scene with him and with Arnold and her.
Right. I want to take this opportunity to bring up Danny again, which is Natalia Reyes.
Yep.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about the main character in this.
So I think this is where her character shines for me, because I'm just Linda Hamilton and gosh, I cannot remember these names.
Mackenzie Davis.
Mackenzie Davis. Their two characters just do not mesh for me, but when I see Danny one-on-one with Sarah Connor, I feel that, and I like that Danny's character has this empathy, you know? And so she's the one trying to pull people together, and, she wants to save Sarah Connor, when she's like running from that facility, and kind of disobeying orders put upon her to basically sacrifice all the rest and try to save herself. So I think she shines in this part as not really, she's not stealing the scene, but she works with the scene. So I like what they have with her character here so far.
Yeah, and I want to clarify, I don't dislike her in this role. I think she pulls her weight very well, but I think she's unfortunately saddled with the I am the audience in this kind of role where I have to learn through all of this craziness. Everyone else is in on how a Terminator movie works, and she's the one who's new to it. And I do think she does a good job of kind of displaying that.
Yeah, she has a little bit of a sweetness to her that's missing from the other characters.
Yeah. So this is kind of the moment where the T-800, he had told his wife, where they apparently have an arrangement where it's kind of this sexless marriage where he just does duties for her and helps care for the family, which I really like that in a way. Like it's just this, I don't know,
he's their protector.
Didn't he say too that she came from a bad relationship before, like an abusive relationship, and so he kind of
like
stepped in, and that made more sense.
It's sort of like a symbiotic relationship where he's in his own way protected by them because nobody's gonna really question a guy with a family.
It's a beard.
Yeah. So
I also just love how he serves them beers. He puts the little,
he puts
the lime in there. And he's like, this is how they
I
like
will say,
it.
the humor, the comedy for me works really well, and especially when he's like, "I'm funny." Like, why does she like
thinks
you?
I'm really funny.
So it landed for me. All the moments with the humor, the beers especially was really good. What was that? Man, there was a really good line he says here too that I thought was really funny. Oh well.
Yeah. But he kind of knew that this time was coming and that he would eventually have to face this. And he's like, all right, well, time to get down to business. He shows them his arsenal. He tells his wife this is time. She understands this is what he had been talking about now. And they kind of share a heartfelt hug. And it's actually kind of touching in a weird way. It
really
is. It is.
And his son, he has a son of all things.
Yeah. Not biological.
I know,
but
adopted, but his son hugs him though.
Yeah.
It's cute.
I kind of liked seeing, in a weird way, just as Arnold Schwarzenegger's gotten older, just letting him show a little bit more of his age and personality in this role.
Yeah.
Even though it's still the Terminator. I imagine as he's reclining here petting his dog, that's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Something I could see him doing, yeah.
But all right, so they go off on their mission and they commandeer a jumbo jet. Am I missing something in this section here?
I mean, so the idea was to get EMPs. So they were going to meet with Linda Hamilton's friend, and they grab it. Then, because of everything else, they get the big plane. Then the EMPs are destroyed.
Yeah, Rev 9 also gets a big plane.
He gets a big plane.
Yeah, and then we get let's just fast forward to the end here. We have two massive action sequences where I start to kind of my eyes glaze over a little bit because it starts to look a little too
one too many fight scenes.
No, well, I associate the Terminator franchise with these knockdown, drag out practical fights, and this is very much like Fast and Furious.
I brought up Fast and Furious when I was watching this.
Yeah, it's whereas Fast and Furious, they do a lot of their own stunts. I get that, but they also have these high wire CGI heavy plane sequences
when they're in the plane, and then they have to take the car out of the plane with the parachute. I was like,
exactly.
That is straight out of Fast and Furious.
And while I admire the construction of this action sequence, I'm also just this just doesn't. I'm taken out of the reality of this movie. I don't know how y'all. I guess we can talk about that first big sequence. There's cool things that happen in it, but it's like the plane sequence. Y'all have any thoughts? And then the dam sequence after that. Damn.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of like a weird mix for me because maybe it's similar to you. It's I appreciate what they're putting in front of my eyeballs, but I kind of started to glaze over a little bit. And for me, I think it was that they just kept upping the ante every fight. I'm like, okay, we're at fight number 6 now with this Rev 9. and we still haven't even gotten to the final location.
Yeah.
Like, can we just get to the warehouse? Like,
It's also a bit jump the sharky in terms of just how many like things happen like that are just
they jumped the shark.
they survived that. Are you kidding me?
Yep.
Irina,
They landed on a hydroelectric dam. Like they parachuted a vehicle onto a very, very thin platform on a hydroelectric dam.
and then they slide down the dam
and then
are
they go under the water.
They're pummeled by water. And,
Yeah, exactly.
AJ, Irina, any thoughts on these developments? This action sequence
Stretches your suspension of disbelief a little thin because I don't know. I feel like the action is there, but just kind of like the stars in this, they're kind of old and creaky. Like that's just the kind of overall sense of, some of this polish is the bones are there. It's good. Like it pumps the adrenaline, but it still doesn't it's not finished at some point.
Right.
I don't know. And then it just kind of gets dragged out and slows and I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like usually with scenes like that, my eyes glaze over anyway. And I'm like, I guess I'll see who comes out alive after this scenario. And then, so I wasn't really paying attention too closely to that part. Just was kind of like a lot of air gymnastics going on.
Yep.
And, but I do like the latter sequence where we have a little more of a knockdown, drag out.
I totally agree with you. It ends strong. We do get a moment where we think that the T-800, Arnold Schwarzenegger, or Carl, I'll just call him Carl, has a...
I'm never going to call you Carl.
He's been seriously damaged, as he usually is in these movies, like skeleton exposed, all that good stuff. But you think he's kind of been knocked out, but he obviously climbs up. You get your dun 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 thing that AJ loves when they overuse it.
Although they didn't overuse it in this one.
They didn't. That's true.
I thought it was very effective how they used the music in this one. When it first hit, I was like, have they not used it yet?
It was more restrained. I will say that in this one for sure.
Yeah.
Genesis just like kept dropping it. Like needle drop. Dun 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. I get it. Like Kyle Reese shows up. Dun, 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 dun.
This one, they saved it for the very last fight and one of the cooler moments, I think. So
as you should.
Yes, and Rev 9 is obviously like right on their asses, and they barely make it into this the inevitable factory or foundry final boss fight location. Here's why Mackenzie Davis rocks. She has the coolest weapon in this fight. It's like a chain with a hook at the end
that
of it.
was super
like,
cool.
I'm like, when she starts spinning that thing against the Rev 9, and there's this really cool scene where it is all CGI, but she like slices and dices the liquid form of this thing, and it just falls apart in the most satisfying way.
So this is what I was wanting from her augmented human self. I wanted to see an example of what that would mean other than just wielding a sledgehammer and whacking really hard.
Or seeing planes and drones that no one else can see.
Yeah. We haven't talked anything about the future stuff. We can quickly knock that out.
Or Danny.
Yeah, the Danny stuff where Danny is revealed, and actually it's kind of important. Danny is revealed to be
Mother Mary.
Yeah.
Mother Mary. Basically the modern the new John Connor figure. And Mackenzie Davis's character Grace was basically saved by her in the future and raised to kind of be her right-hand woman, I guess. Yeah. And they're
kinda
just
like a daughter.
Yeah, partners in crime, defeating evil. And it same stuff that always happens in the future. She has to get sent back to save her. And what are y'all's thoughts on her being, I guess, this new John Connor character? Are y'all cool with that?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, they hinted at it, or at the very least, it seemed obvious to me. Because they're like, oh, she's just here to be a womb, and she's just going to produce the next John Connor. And I'm like, I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah. It's
she is the John Connor. Yep. Badass.
Yep. Irina?
Yeah, I liked it fine. It was kind of what I expected anyway, but I felt the timing of when this was explained was kind of shoehorned in a spot. you know?
Yeah.
Like, okay, where are we going to put this conversation? Oh,
Like,
let's
why
do
didn't
it
it happen earlier?
Let's do it during this flight sequence where tension is high or something. And I don't know, it felt a little slapped in there, I guess. So I didn't feel much
Yeah.
of the impact because this whole time you've been getting weird energy from Grace, and like I know there's something behind it. I'm like, oh, there has to be a reason why she's acting weird all the time
Yeah.
about her. And they saved it for a little too late in the game to reveal that, because now it feels like we've just hit the climax and everything is already chaos. I don't get to feel that emotional connection anymore because that's kind of over and done with, you know? So by the point we do get to when Grace finally sacrifices herself, I didn't really feel anything. I was just
Yeah.
kind of like, yep, well, she's gone. That
Yeah.
was meant to happen. So I don't know.
That was a little
if
sad.
it were revealed a little sooner and gave me a chance to understand Grace a little more and then resonate with her character, I feel like the sacrifice would have felt more like a sacrifice than just she's a pawn in the game or something.
Yeah. I'd agree. I do like the scene between her and Linda Hamilton, or Sarah Connor, where Sarah Connor comes to the realization that, oh, like you're the new John. Like it's a
Right.
like
Yeah.
it was almost it was kind of a cathartic moment for Sarah Connor, where it's that's kind of the tie to them being like now they are more connected, and it could have been harped on a little or done better as or been more impactful, but they really could have sold this as this, oh, this is going to be how Sarah Connor ultimately copes with the loss of John Connor.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to go for that, but they don't quite hit it.
Right.
And it's almost like, with this grizzled Sarah, it's I'm almost afraid she's going to be jealous of Danny.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I would have thought that until that scene where I feel like her character finally tonally takes a turn.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay,
Right.
I'm going to soften a bit here.
Yeah.
And then Danny flips a switch and suddenly she's a badass.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I think you're ready to know now that you become this badass.
yeah, so we got that out of the way. Let's zip back to the final confrontation here. Got Mackenzie Davis swinging the chain around, destroying the Rev 9. We have Sarah Connor shooting guns like she does, and Danny doing her best.
Danny having to take out the generator out of Grace's stomach, and that was pretty brutal.
Yeah. So let's break the scene down. We have the death of Grace, which I thought worked for me. And I thought it kind of added like that moment at the end where she pulls up and sees Grace young. I kind of liked that, honestly. And I'm glad that this movie has stakes enough to kill multiple characters. But yeah, I guess what did y'all think of this final action sequence and the result of everything, how everything played out?
It was effective, but there was something a little underwhelming about it, and I can't quite pinpoint it.
I was about to say it left me feeling hungry. Like I wasn't like I ate a meal, but I still didn't eat the thing I craved. You know what I mean?
Well, I think of T2 and T1, like the ending sequences of those kind of being what I wanted. And this one, obviously it has the key things, like you got the T800, you got the warehouse, you have the T800 having to die, because that's just a thing that has to happen. But the whole, maybe it's just the layout of the complex, I don't know.
They're checking boxes, and I don't care about the characters.
Yeah. I think it. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think it's, for me, probably several different reasons for other people, but for me, I felt like Sarah Connor's character did not really get that cathartic moment that I was wanting for her. I think it's sort of like she got something that kind of filled the gap, or it just didn't feel like a full character arc for her in my mind. And they introduced her and this huge tragedy that she's been going through, but then introduced new characters and had us want to feel for them, and then they got their kind of resolved ending, whereas Sarah Connor feels like in all her reactions, it's like she did, but just from a story perspective, she didn't for me.
Well, again, what they're hoping, and they're not quite successful, what they're hoping that you get out of her resolution is that now she has another person to be alongside her that serves in a similar role that John Connor did. Because if you see that ending scene, they're teamed up now. Like I do want to. The only time I came close to feeling like an emotion, and okay, that sounds really harsh to this movie.
The only time I felt close to an emotion.
But I really loved the moment where both the Rev 9 and the T-800 have been thrown down this shaft, or it's the what's that reactor? It's like the reactor.
Yeah.
And he gives off he says his final line and he's self-destructing, and the whole time this Rev 9 is trying to like scrape its way out, and the way he just holds it down as he's like he's like, no, you stay right there. Here. It was
the turbine thing.
Yeah. It was so perfect as like an emotional high note, go out on a high note moment for
he's not talking about the turbine. He's talking about when they fall onto
once they've fallen and it's already happened,
basically. He's
stuck there, still barely alive, and the Rev 9's like trying to claw its way back.
It actually reminded me of T3, like the way that Terminator was just sort of like trying to crawl and scramble.
He pulls at its spine. Yeah, it is very similar. Yeah. It just works for me. But it was just cool, and I think I was a little more attached to this T-800 than the one in T3, because it does have more of an emotional...
Yeah,
because I want them to explore why, this outdated model, this obsolete model, through sheer power of will is able to overcome. Several generations newer. And explore that possibility.
Yeah, I don't know why they never... I want to say that what the series is trying to say but not say is that, like, this Terminator has heart and none of the other ones do.
Yeah.
But they keep denying it by... It's weird. But I do really like that moment, though, where he just holds the Rev 9 down and, they both meet their demise.
I do, too.
It's a cool moment.
I think this whole scene for me, I really liked the choreography and kind of how each character had their turn to beat on the Terminator, basically.
Yeah.
So
this Terminator Rev 9 is the ultimate punching bag.
Yeah.
Out of the whole series.
So that was satisfying because they all have very different fight styles too. And so it's just, I liked the way it was done. Yeah.
That said, again, it's kind of doing what I come back to. It's doing the same thing that all these Terminator movies have done, where you're endeared to the T-800 and then it dies at the end. I'm like, this is the third time that's happened.
Yep.
Where so T2, T3, and T5 and T5 he gets resurrected and he's enhanced. Oh, upgrades. That was so dumb.
That was really bad.
But
he came in like the Kool-Aid man, like, hey.
Upgraded. But yeah, I think we've seen enough of at this point T-800 dying in the end, giving the metaphorical thumbs up, and on to the next one. It's starting to just diminish the weight of this character dying when you've seen it so many times and you just expect, he'll be back for the next one.
Yeah.
But I'm still positive on it. So final scene or final moment of the movie, we have Danny and Sarah Connor, who have teamed up. They're driving a nice, it looks like a fresh off the market Jeep. And they pull up to a playground and they see Mackenzie Davis's Grace character playing on a swing set or something, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll come back when she's ready." But looks like she's doing all right now. And then we cut to credits.
Well, I think it's more like she wanted to see if she was doing okay, and she never wants her to get to a position where she's sacrificing herself for Danny again.
Okay, yeah, I misread that.
Yeah. No, they're not like...
I was like, she's
it's
not old enough yet.
It's not a Dumbledore and Harry Potter thing. Yeah. She's not being fattened for the kill.
You just see Sarah Connor just like placing a gun under her swing set with a tape that says "Learn this."
Learn this.
Yeah. Any thoughts on the final moments of this film?
I think it's a cool idea to see them team up. You know, I would watch that, but I still feel kind of like something is unresolved.
Yeah.
But I guess that, like you were saying, it might be just intentional because there was going to be another one, I suppose.
Yeah. AJ, any final thoughts? David, final thoughts? All right. So that will close out our thoughts on, or our discussion on Terminator Dark Fate. Going to take a quick break. And on the other end, we'll get into our reviews with numbered scores. Also talk about what critics thought, get into some box office, and close out with some franchise talk. So we'll see y'all then. Welcome back. Let's talk Terminator Dark Fate. David, you got our scores in a bowl. You want to pull them at random? Yep,
that's how paper jingles.
For you ASMR fanatics out there.
All right.
There you go.
All right, Reese, I want you to guess who is going to be coming up first.
It's
very important that you guess.
AJ.
No, it's not. It's our absentee ballot.
Noah.
Coming in with a 6.
6. All right. Did he say anything other than that?
He did not.
Just 6. So that Noah will be going in the system as 6. So go with the next one then.
Let me guess for him. All right. Honestly, it's like not
I liked it,
bad, but it's not great.
Yeah. It's really like
it didn't offend me.
Yeah, they should have just ended it 2. Yeah. There's that review.
All right, nailed it. Next up, Irina with an 8.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed watching this, and I think I was a little negative when I was watching it the other day because I had a morning shift at the bakery and hadn't eaten in a while, and I had gone to the gym, so I was sitting through Terminator, a lot of action and stuff, and just so I think reflecting on it again, I was like, okay, I wasn't as negative on it. That was kind of just the hanger talking.
She was hangry.
So it's not quite as good as T1 and 2 for me.
Yeah.
But I think it is third in line. So I feel like 8 is a good one for me. I don't really know what else to say other than I found it refreshing, and maybe the bad taste of the previous 2 movies was still left in my mouth, so I saw this one with more forgiving eyes. So I'm gonna leave it with an 8. I think they did a lot of good work with this one.
Look with your forgiving eyes.
My forgiving eyes.
More people should.
Alrighty. Next up, we have AJ with a 5.
All right.
I had a feeling we'd be going.
Yeah, this one's going to be all over the place.
Yeah, this it's a 5. I mean, right down the middle.
It's a 5.
It's not completely negative. Had a lot of ground. I mean, this movie did not penetrate, my, I guess,
robotic heart.
Exactly.
You haven't learned your empathy yet.
Right. Yeah. It didn't. There's a lot of implications on the time travel stuff that just kind of it skirts away from. I've never thought I would say this, but I think this movie would be better if they just relied on the recurring star, power. I honestly think if you cut Grace's character out of this movie, it is a better movie. And combine her and maybe combat and, some of her augmentedness and just, she does contribute to the action, especially with the chain fight. That's fun, but she's just bland, nothing, and just, whereas Danny's neutral, but in a open book kind of way. Mackenzie Davis here is just like neutral and I don't care kind of way. I don't know, like she just does not click. She just the cogs don't mesh, and in any of these characters here, I think she detracts from the dynamic or the potential dynamic of Sarah Connor taking the new messianic figure Danny under her wing and training her and being the protector, like the role shifting. I just feel like this was, we need a fighter, we need the returning, badass, we need to like have these cameos and all that stuff. They were, ticking boxes on a formula chart instead of building relationships and building development. And the character of Grace got in the way of that. Yeah, I really did not feel inspired or anything other than a couple, cool fight sequences and choreography. The movie overall, I thought, technically the action is good and special effects and like the C5 flight and all the, vehicles. It's a return to form in those senses. I think I still stand by my kind of, Linda Hamilton is a little too grizzled in one note. Again, I think there's that lack of meshing with Grace that's just in the way. And I just can't get around that. That's the biggest thorn in the side of this movie for me. Because we barely talked about Danny or who Danny could be or why Danny was this or that in this review of the podcast. It's all about everybody else. Yet she's this new John Connor character, this new savior figure, supposedly. But she's just so overshadowed by everyone else.
Kind of like John Connor in T2.
Yeah, I think the highlight of this movie was the Terminator, the Rev 9. I think it was a good amalgamation of all the previous Terminator iterations in terms of technology. Performance was spot on. And forgive me, I forget the actor's name, but I thought he did an excellent job.
Gabriel Luna.
Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Gabriel Luna.
I'm kidding.
I think that from a sci-fi aspect, kind of returning to the sci-fi thriller of the roots instead of just pure cashing in on action, like I think that would have been welcome because you have all these tried out attempts of time travel and finagling timelines and stuff just to reboot and try to milk the cash cow. There's so much opportunity for sci-fi exploration of why does this cybernetic organism have the ability to learn? Like he has programs to understand philosophy and basic psychology and stuff like that. But understanding is not the same thing as experiencing, yet it seems like there's almost this gray area that they could have really pushed on. There's so much great discussion point there. Instead, they just went action.
Yeah.
Which is not bad because, T2's action. It's amazing action. One of the best action movies of all time. This is just, I don't know. It's a lot of mixed things that don't click together overall in a somewhat fun package.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Next up, David with an 8 as well.
Nice.
I have a lot of similar views that Irina has. There's something about the setting with this movie that works for me, which is very big in a Terminator movie, in my opinion. I think that because they went back down to the streamlined, straightforward Terminator plot of send someone back, protect the savior, survive, fight in a warehouse at the end, get to see some cool fight scenes with a, new version of the Terminator. I don't know, man. Don't try to keep rewriting something that if it's already working. They tried doing that with 4 and 5, and it just fell flat for me because of that. So it was nice going back to form and also having a new scenery and a new twist on the old storyline.
It's the first one to not be in LA.
Yep. And that works for me. I think that Danny is definitely more of a blank slate, but I think that the actress does a really good job. She develops quickly and balances well with Linda Hamilton. I think Linda Hamilton does a great job. I think Arnold is funny in this, way better than he was, I think, in everything up, except for T1, T2. And it landed for me. And maybe it's because of just the whiplash of watching T5 before this. It made me really appreciate this return to form. But yeah, I love the new Rev 9. I think it's super cool. I would rank it up in my top 2 or 3 Terminators. Nice. And kind of what Irina was saying before, I think T2 is obviously the best of the Terminators. I would say this is nearly tied with T1 for me. So this might be my second choice after T2 because obviously T4 and T5 aren't better than this movie, obviously.
Yeah.
And then T3 is a decent movie, but it's got all the earmarks of the early 2000s, and maybe this one won't age well later, but I like the treatment that it gives, and it's very similar to T1, except for with a more modern day treatment, and that kind of works for me. So there's a lot with the first Terminator movie that is innovative, but the acting is sometimes. The storyline gets a little weird, but it's innovative and he gets a bunch of points for that. But this one, I think it keeps my interest a little bit more in some other areas. So, and
probably
I like
more rewatchable for you.
A little bit, honestly. I would probably choose this one more often than not.
So much like Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, except for this one's so much better, though.
Oh, wow.
Right? It's a whole 1 point better.
You're slandering your favorite movie.
It's a 1 point swing. Gosh, what else could I say about this movie? It's just good. It's a good movie.
It's good. All right. Cool.
I enjoyed it more. I came in with low expectations. I think that also affected it.
Yeah, I think same here.
So I was expecting this to be like T5 bad. And also one last thing on the whole time traveling thing. From the first movie, it's always been an issue for me. And by this point, I've learned to suspend disbelief. Like the Terminator time traveling paradox will not work no matter what movie you're in. So I don't think it matters. It's like it does. This makes as much sense as any of the other ones to me. Yeah. So I'm okay with it. So it was a fun ride as long as you can turn your brain off and watch some fun action sequences. See Arnold, have a family.
Linda Hamilton. Yep.
Alrighty, and last but not least, we have Reese with a 7.
Yeah, I think this is a straight down the middle, decent Terminator time.
Decent Terminator time. I like it.
Yeah, term time.
It's time for term.
Yeah, it's another, much like T3, it's a back to basics type of movie, with the couple of like typical Terminator twists that you expect. You got the killing of John Connor at the beginning, which is like, whoa, and then you have the Arnold being Carl, the Draper,
which is like, whoa.
Yeah, which is like, whoa, really?
It's like, whoa.
My problems with this movie come from it's and this is where it gets complicated. I think this is the very last time you can get away with doing the typical Terminator formula of Terminator sent back into time and it becomes a whole chase movie. This is the last time you can get away with it without it starting to feel really tired and done with. Like unless you can include it with unless you can tell it in a completely fresh way, which I think they've done just about everything they can to do that.
Send a monkey back.
Yeah. I'll be the lone defender of Mackenzie Davis here.
Oh, I should have said I also like Mackenzie Davis.
Okay.
I'm not a hater.
Yeah, I really like her. I think she's the mediator of these two worlds. She's from the future, so in a way she can relate to Linda Hamilton's Sarah Connor, and she also knows Danny and is able to be the adhesive between the two. Yes, there's conflict. I actually like the conflict between her and Sarah Connor. They both are kind of vying for the same role as like the protector but for different reasons. And when they come to that understanding of why, of what they need to do, it's kind of, in my opinion, it was satisfying, and it was a nice character building moment for the both of them. I think her physicality is the best of the three. Like when I'm watching her fight, or when she's like weak, like I believe it the most with her. Like just when she's kicking ass, and then when she's like, I need to be rejuvenated or whatever. I'm most invested in like how she's doing, because I think she's so tied to the success of the mission. If she's not doing well, then this mission's not going to get done. We need to make sure that she's good. And I think Mackenzie Davis does a really good job of portraying that. Danny, I think, is fine. I really think her role is the one where it's like the most relying on a sequel to happen so you can flesh it out more. But she does a good job as like origin story John Connor 2.0. And of course, Linda Hamilton, the crazy thing is Linda Hamilton, she literally slipped back into this role, and it feels like she's playing Sarah Connor again. So I really like, I really like her. But yeah, AJ, you're correct. There's a little bit of that, like slipping back into the legacy style role where you've a couple of times it's a little, I don't know what the word for it is, but it's just not quite, doesn't quite line up completely 1-to-1 to her original character. That said, everything else in the movie is like it's perfectly competent. This is the ultimate like competent Terminator movie. Like it's going to do things that are satisfying that you expect in a Terminator movie. There's a cool new Terminator. There's 3 to 4 great action sequences. It's a chase movie. Satisfying resolution. T-800 dies in a way that's slightly emotional, and it makes you kind of sad. So yeah, it's like I can't give it anything other than a 7. It's got that's exactly what it deserves. It does what it does really well. I have a couple of issues with it, but it also doesn't really do anything exceptionally new with the formula either. So 7 out of 10.
That's it.
AJ, you want to crunch those numbers for us?
All right. Group average for Terminator Dark Fate is 6.8.
All right.
And where does that land it in our overall assortment here? Okay, so 6.8. We have John Carter. And below it, at a 6.7, Die Hard 2. Above it, at a 6.9, Clash of the Titans, the 2010 version.
Ooh, that's interesting. I'd put it above that movie, but I think it's correctly aligned with those other two you listed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's too much work for you, but are you able to give us the final franchise ranking of the Terminator movies? What's our overall ranking?
Let's see, just numerical scores here. We'll go lowest to highest. At a 4 even, Terminator Genesis. Next we have Terminator Salvation at a 5.7. Then we have Terminator Dark Fate, which we just talked about, at a 6.8. Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines, 7.4. The Terminator, the OG, at 8.5. And T2, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, 9.8.
Can I say I'm so happy because that is my exact ranking of this franchise. I'm so proud of where we fell on all these movies. Even if that's not y'all's individual rankings, that is my ranking of the franchise.
Yeah. I agree with that as well. I am really sad for Genesis because I think the opening premise was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that Emilia Clarke did a admirable job of trying to pull that movie from the ashes.
Yep.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
All right. Moving on to what critics thought. On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a 70% with an audience score of 82%. Metacritic, the movie has a 54 from critics and a 3.9 from audiences. So
What
weird.
the heck happened?
Yeah, I don't know. This one's all over the place. As I've said, I think this is the most polarizing Terminator movie.
That was weird. I don't know if I've heard a reverse in score that dramatic.
I know. And on IMDb, it has a 6.2. So not so great there either. But hey, at least it's got that nice Rotten Tomatoes score, which is positive for both critics and audiences, which is odd. Like, why were the audiences on Rotten Tomatoes positive and the audiences on Metacritic so negative? That
was dramatic.
Yeah, I don't get it. Box office, movie released on November 1st in 2019. Also playing at the time was the billion-plus dollar grosser Joker, along with Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, and Harriet. The movie was budgeted at $185 million. What do y'all think this movie did worldwide at the box office in 2019? Starting with you, Irina.
Ugh.
I rarely start with you.
What was the
Budget
number again?
$185 million.
This is tough. I'm gonna say 250.
250. David.
I'm gonna say 200.
AJ.
I'm going to say, I'll go high. Let's say 500.
500. And Irina, you are the closest.
What was it?
Movie did 261
Oh, wow.
million.
Yep.
She was the most hesitant. She's like, I don't know, 250.
Well,
That was a good guess.
I knew it was low, but not. I don't know. It was random.
Yeah, this is the
I was
first.
guessing for a overseas audience uptick.
Yeah,
which
I didn't think about that.
Honestly, that's a smart guess because Genesis was saved by overseas
Right.
audiences. Genesis had a huge overseas take, and this one just did not happen for it for whatever reason. This is the first movie in the franchise to be a straight up capital letter bomb. Did not
That's
do
so
well.
sad.
Yeah, did not do well at all. And you have to know that that's because of Genesis just stinking up the air for this one. Like, I really think if this movie had Genesis's spot and Genesis did not exist, the Terminator franchise would be in a different situation now. I think Dark Fate would have the numbers that Genesis did, if not more. And then we may have actually even gotten a sequel to this movie. But as it stands, it's a confluence of just kind of bad things that happened to contribute to this box office. For one, we had Genesis, which was easily the worst reviewed Terminator movie. Yeah, it has a couple of defenders, but it's most people you talk to, they think Genesis is the nadir of this franchise. So that had the bad word of mouth on it. Then we had, this is also the closest between releases that we've had a Terminator movie release. So I think it's 3 to 4 years. So there's confusion as to whether or not this is a sequel to Genesis or if this is a reboot. What it actually is a sequel to Terminator 2. But in the trailers, you never get the sense that it's like, hey, cut out all the rest. This is the official sequel to Terminator 2, which might have been an interesting thing to like advertise. Like, hey, we know we those past movies weren't so great. This is the back to basics Terminator. You don't get any of that. There's a lot of just muddled advertising for these movies where it's so hard to tell like what is canon and what is not. Like Terminator 5, Genesis, like, was that a sequel to Terminator 4? I don't think so. I think it's a sequel to 2, but we don't definitively know. No one spells this out. So when you see a generically titled Terminator Dark Fate, you're like, oh, Terminator Genesis, that was a generically titled Terminator movie. Terminator Dark Fate is probably the sequel to that thing. It's not. In addition to this, once people did see the movie, they were divided on its take and its direction. The movie makes a couple of bold choices, as we've already mentioned, the killing of John Connor and just kind of the nerfing of the T-800 into this Carl character that's just not the badass we originally remembered. There's certain people that like their Terminator a certain way, and this didn't fit that mold. So it didn't have the best word of mouth either, even though the reviews weren't nearly towards the bottom. So it didn't have a great opening, didn't have a great multiplier on release numbers, so was ultimately a pretty massive failure for the studio. And that is why we've talked about this Terminator franchise on this podcast, because I don't think we're getting a sequel to this anytime soon. Terminator Dark Fate, if we're doing franchise talk, AJ, you did say you had something on the franchise talk portion. You wanna drop that here?
Well, I just we kind of alluded to like how we rank them and stuff, and I don't know if you wanted to circle back around to ranking of the actual Terminators, and also where would you chop this franchise?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Let's do this. So we'll start with what is each of y'all's head canon for this franchise? Which ones do you keep and which ones do you kick out of bed?
That's easy.
AJ, since you've been thinking on this, let's start with you. What is your canon for this franchise?
All right. We're up to me. Stop after 3. I think there's a argument that some people would say 1 and 2, but kind of continually rebooting and saying that 3 is a sequel, or 3 is a sequel to 2, 4 is a sequel to 2, 5 is a sequel to 2, 6 is a sequel to 2. Just stop.
Yeah.
I kind of alluded or made the comparison with Linda Hamilton. I can't even speak. Sorry, Linda Hamilton to Harrison Ford earlier, and I actually make a lot of likeness and similarities to the Indiana Jones franchise, which is near and dear to my heart. But I see Raiders is one of my favorite movies like ever, and obviously The Last Crusade is an amazing movie, and it goes back and forth of which one's better. Temple of Doom, definitely the bottom of the totem pole there, has its defenders. I like it.
I like it too.
I like it, and I think it's a good movie. It's just in between two massive giants. But it is worthy of being in their company, and that's how I feel about T3. T1, Terminator, and Judgment Day, but T2 are like just excellent, awesome movies. And I like Terminator 3. It's just overshadowed by the first two, but I think it's deserving of being in a trilogy of those, but that's where it needs to stop.
All right.
Opinion. So that's
so 1, 2, 3 from AJ. David, how about you?
I think I remember giving Terminator 3 a 7, or I think I gave it a 7. It's there. I liked it. We'll put it that way. But if we're going with like what I would choose to be canon, I would do 1, 2, 6.
1, 2, 6.
I'm okay with that. 1 and 2 obviously have to be there. It's just all a matter of what you put after 2. Is it 3 or 6? And I would be okay in a world where 3 was there and 6 wasn't, but I liked this one more than I liked 3. 4 and 5 can just be burned.
All right. Arena.
Mine is kind of weird because it's sort of I get to swap realities for fun.
Yeah.
And so I would do 1, 2, 3, and then try one time doing 1, 2, 6.
Okay.
And
so you're
just
having your cake and eating it too.
Yeah. So it's like I want to see which one. I don't know. They have completely different moods to them. Where 1, 2, 6 seems a little more grim because John Connor dies, and then it moves on to a different, I guess, timeline. But then if you do 1, 2, 3, it still has that grim ending, but that maintains that. There's something about the sequence of 1, 2, 3 that maintains this kind of warmth to it, this heart that I recognize as Terminator. So I could see myself going back and forth between those.
All right. My rank, I am a 1, 2, 3 guy. However, if Dark Fate had decided to seen those first 3 as canon and continued, which it could have,
it easily could have.
Yeah, I would have accepted a 1, 2, 3, 6.
I agree. I kind of that would have been the optimal way to do it.
Yeah, but they didn't. They decided. I'm so frustrated with movies that decide to erase previous movies. I'm like, just embrace your warts and just move forward. Like, Star Wars did it. It accepted the prequels, and now we have a Obi-Wan Kenobi show that's apparently pretty good and people like it. I haven't seen it because I don't care about Star Wars. But you can turn, lemons into lemonade, is what I'm saying. It just embrace your canon. It annoys me when we just excise these things out.
They legitimately could have killed older John Connor, and that would have been fine.
Yeah. So as it stands, 1, 2, 3, on a day where I'm feeling exceptionally generous, I will throw 4 in there just because I respect what it was trying to do. So it's.
I think my alternate, I would say, have the setup premise of Genesis.
Combine the two, yeah,
and put the technical aspects of Salvation in, and then maybe somehow end up at 6.
Yeah, I agree. If we're etching it in stone, I am a 1, 2, 3, just like you, AJ.
Cool.
All right. Now, do you want to rank your Terminators, or are we not ready on that?
Oh, I think maybe just a generic statement, like we kind of already said. I mean, we really appreciate that the Terminator here, the Rev 9, was a good blend and homage to kind of its predecessors.
I agree. So we can just say that we do like the Rev 9. We appreciate it, and I think we do value it over the sequels after post 2. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. So he solidifies his third place in Terminator designs,
or at least top 3.
But in regards to this franchise, this was once again supposed to kick off a trilogy. This has to be the most a franchise has ever tried to kick off a new trilogy. And I've said this in multiple episodes, but we had Salvation, which wanted to... Actually, I may even go back. I think Terminator 3 wanted to kick off a trilogy. And then Salvation wanted to be the start of a new trilogy. And then Genesis definitely wanted to start a new trilogy. And now Dark Fate was written as the start of a new trilogy. Guys, when are we going to learn? Stop planning trilogies when you don't know they're going to happen. It actually makes me angry. Why do this?
Unless you have the funds like Lord of the Rings did and it's already a go,
well,
what are you doing?
Yeah.
Also, if you're planning a trilogy, you need to lay groundwork for continuity. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to make this movie, and then, oh, they're still alive, so I'm going to make a second story, and it's a trilogy.
Yeah.
A good example, I think, is the Batman, the Matt Reeves one, the recent one. There's all sorts of stuff in there that he's already set up for continuity for sequels and stuff.
They have
it's
it figured out in the right way. I can tell.
Yeah.
That's going to be great. But go back to Fantastic Beasts. That was mapped out as a 5-film franchise. Off of what?
How do you feel about the new Avatar franchise coming our way?
Okay, it's James Cameron. I trust him.
That's the one time you think you're like, all right, well,
he's got all the money in the world. He's king of the world. He'll figure it out.
He's king of the world.
Well, he's also filming concurrently, writing stories concurrently.
Yeah.
It's an overall arc instead of, oh, let's see where we can go after this, and this. It's, I want to make a trilogy, but I don't know what I'm going to do with it.
Yeah. I'm just how about just make a good one movie, and if you want to tease a future, do the whole Marvel thing. Put a little post-credits scene in if you really feel that itch to set up something else. Because thankfully, Dark Fate is more or less self-contained. It does tease future stuff, but I think it mostly functions on its own, so at least there's that. Whereas I think Genesis is more reliant on there being sequels. But yeah, it's just it's kind of infuriating.
Also, when you're planning a trilogy, who are your characters left that you're going to be carrying the torch? You have Linda Hamilton, who is getting up there in age.
Yeah.
So how much more is she going to write a trilogy? And then Danny, the characters, we don't really have much investment in.
Yeah, and what are you going to bring back Arnold again? And then he's going to die.
He literally said, I won't be back. He said that.
Yeah, but he can never, he always comes back. I mean,
yeah,
it's just...
James Bond will return. Never say never again.
Yeah. Literally. Yeah, that is exactly Sean Connery being like, I'm not going to be back, and then he came back.
I still believe Daniel Craig's going to come back.
We'll see.
That whole
I haven't
missile
seen.
on the
I
island.
still haven't seen the latest one. So
Oh,
don't
you
spoil
you
anything.
definitely should see it.
Well,
please.
then I will take back what I said.
Yeah, so another thing to add is this was when James Cameron actually got back involved with Terminator and actually started to care about his original franchise again. So he had also helped in mapping out these future movies, and apparently they had done a pretty good amount of writing for these sequels that will never happen now. So yeah, the franchise at this point, based off that box office, is dead in the water. Like there is an anime show that's planned for Netflix. I don't know if it's a sequel or a spin-off or something like that, but the Terminator world is continuing in some form or function on Netflix with that anime series. However, I never consider these animes to be like canon with the main Terminator line.
Also,
Yeah.
Netflix in their kind of financial difficulties at the moment, they've been canceling a lot of Netflix originals as well. So
Yeah.
that may actually not see the screen.
Yeah, I think
don't
it's
know
I think
but-
it's enough into development that it's gonna be pushed through.
Okay.
But yeah, it's normally things like that I don't consider to be a quote unquote continuation of the franchise proper. More just like added flavor to what we already know. But who knows? That said, if I'm being realistic, Terminator is such a huge name that I personally will classify this franchise as dormant and not dead. But I think it's going to be dormant for quite some time. Like in whatever happens next, I don't think we're getting Arnold Schwarzenegger in any more of these movies or Linda Hamilton. I think the next plausible step for this franchise is totally a reboot territory type of thing, or just some sort of re-envisioning of the franchise.
I just ask one thing.
Yep.
Can they stop renaming Skynet every time?
Yeah, I know.
Please.
Yeah, we got Skynet, Genesis, Legion. What's next?
But how else are we going to determine that it's a new timeline?
Yeah, meta. Honestly, like when I heard that Facebook was doing the whole meta thing, I was like, this is totally like a Skynet thing. But yeah, I think the franchise is dormant, but it's gonna be long dormant. Like it's gonna be a long hibernation before we get more Terminator on the big theatrical screen. What do y'all think? Do y'all think this is a dormant for a while?
I would
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just such a hard bomb on this one, and just lukewarm response that I think the audiences have spoken. They're like, put this to rest. We're not seeing this for a while.
Yeah, this is going to become one of those things that T1 and 2 are huge enough that 20 years from now, someone's going to remake. It's going to be a classic by then. It already is, but it'll be prime for, hey, let's remake this and then start a whole thing from there.
Yeah.
And then, oh yeah, they tried to make these other things that weren't successful.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
And when they do remake it, I think it needs to be radically different, but still having the bones of the franchise. I don't want a one-for-one remake of the original Terminator
Yeah.
movie.
It's like, let's start it all over again.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on Terminator Dark Fate or the franchise as a whole? We got through it, guys.
I think that's a wrap.
It's a
I'm glad
wrap.
we talked about it. Thank you for picking it.
Yeah. I am
I'm
too.
glad we did too. And I think after T2, it was so much fun to see like where we ended up falling on each individual movie and
It's
which
a
one,
good variety.
yeah, which
Yeah.
ones we liked and didn't like. I love that we all kind of were in alignment on T3. That made me
Yeah.
happy. It was so fun.
Yeah, because that one does still have its detractors out there.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome having the guest spot to on T4 for defending that one. That was cool.
We've done a lot with this one.
Julio with the
Yeah.
contrarians.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and
I'm glad I got to see all of the films in the franchise now.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have if it weren't for you picking them.
Also, I'm glad it left on a higher note than Genesis. So,
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And we have leading into the next episode with our next guest spot.
yeah. So, next episode, we'll be talking about Edge of Tomorrow, closing out my Long in the Tooth
Finally.
miniseries. Big episode with Alex and Sharon Shaw from School of Movies. Anyway, goodbye, you guys. Have a good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it may
Alternate
be.
timeline.
Yeah, alternate timeline.
Dun 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 dun.
Goodbye.
I won't be back.